When we're laying on our deathbed, you're not going to worry about how much money you had, how much power you had, how much prestige. You're going to see that that was all game, that that was all an illusion. The only thing that's going to matter is the impact you had on other people's lives.
We are all on a separate journey. But the beautiful thing about our life here on this earth is at my funeral, they ain't going to talk about my success. They're going to talk about who Nick was and how Nick lived and how Nick loved and encouraged.
Success is incredibly important, but even more important than success, it's having an impact. It's knowing you haven't walked the planet in vain. It's knowing that because you've been here, you've blessed lives, you've developed people, and you have made the world a better place.
The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart.
Life is a mirror, and life gives us not what we want. Life gives us who we are. When you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice.
Have you ever stopped to wonder about the soul behind the spotlight? The truth behind the headlines? Beneath every glamorous facade lies a story waiting to be told. A journey full of triumphs, struggles, heartaches, and victories. Welcome to People, the groundbreaking new series here on the Alpha Warrior Show. Tonight, we're setting politics aside. No hidden agendas, no filters, just pure, raw humanity. In a world that constantly tries to categorize us, it's easy to forget what binds us together. Our shared experiences, our laughter, our tears, and the authentic moments that define who we truly are. Each week, we're going to explore the powerful, emotional, and beautiful imperfect lives of people who inspire us, captivate us, and remind us that we're all in this incredibly messy and extraordinary journey together. We'll laugh, we'll reflect, and we'll dive deep into the stories that often go untold, unapologetically, real, and deeply personal. Get ready to meet the heart behind the headlines, the reality behind the reputation, the persona behind the person, the grit that makes these amazing people tick. This is People, real stories, real connections, real life. And when we come back from this commercial, it's showtime, and I hope you enjoy. The Scales Freedom Collection is where the open ocean meets the red, white, and blue seas we call home. Inspired by salt air, tight lines, and the rhythm of the tide and waves, this collection channels the spirit of freedom through the lens of a waterman's lifestyle. From long-sleeve performance shirts built for elements to buttersoft tees and hats adorned with bold, ocean-inspired American prints, every piece is designed to keep you cool, protected, and connected to the water that sets us free. From weed lines to tree lines, we love our freedom. Shop at badlandsmedia.tv and enter code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. Van Man's taking down big toothpaste with all-natural oral care. Just pure, effective ingredients for a healthier smile. The van never stops. Powered by hydroxyapatite, nature's secret weapon loaded with minerals like eggshells and bone. Two of the best forms of calcium to remineralize teeth and build strong bone tissue. Van Man's tooth powder combined with pulling oils and peppermint aloe mouth rinse is truly the ultimate fluoride-free dental hygiene bundle that saves you 25% off the individual prices. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/vanman. That's badlandsmedia.tv/vanman to hop in the van for the ultimate way to care for your teeth naturally. That's badlandsmedia.tv/ /vanman. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/vanman. Well, everybody, welcome back to the Alpha Warrior Show People series. We're going beyond just politics and trending issues. We're going to dive deep into the lives, struggles, and victories of those who lived it. Tonight, my guest is a man who's worn the badge, fought crime in New Jersey as a police officer, and now is stepping into the political arena to continue serving his community. Talking about Mark Razzoli. Let's get his story and let's welcome him to his stage. First and foremost, brother, did I get your last name right, or do we need to fix it?
You got it right. Listen, I've heard Ravioli. Your name, I've heard it, so you got it right. As us cops, I think we've seen so many names throughout our careers. We're great at it. So yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on. Always great to be with a brother officer. I appreciate it.
And man, we're gonna have some fun times when we get into that part of the conversation. I kind of gave you a little bit of a heads up before the show started. Kind of the way this people format goes. Now we're not isolated to that, so if we get into a part of your story and we take it a different direction, we're good with that. And then ultimately, where we finish up with your story is going to be something that's very important, especially for my peeps out there in the Northeast. So let's start with this. Before we get into today, let's do some Pulp Fiction style stuff and rewind the clock, go backwards. Sure. And what was life like for little Mark growing up, and were you always in New Jersey?
Always in New Jersey, born and raised in Jersey City, where eventually I became a cop. The usual little league, track, played sports. I was an altar boy. Us cops always were altar boys. I think at some point it's hysterical when I tell people that, they start laughing.
This is true,
right? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have to say, a lot of people who I grew up with, we all ended up either cops or firemen. Jersey is blue collar city. Now you wouldn't think so. If you go down to the waterfront, it's changed a lot. But, the people I worked with are responsible for that, because, when you see a city like Jersey City transition into what it is now, listen, without public safety, which is the foundation of any community, that wouldn't be where it's at right now. So I'm proud of the people I worked with that contributed to that.
So, altar boy, I'm making the assumption based off my background.
Catholic school, of course, it was all about having that discipline. I was in Catholic school. There were really nuns, unlike today, rulers flying. I was hit a few times, as most of it, it was legitimate. Now if you have one or two nuns, it's shocking. But, when I was in grammar school, we had a lot of nuns. A lot of discipline, which is great. I think uniforms and discipline is what's really missing today, right? There's no discipline.
It absolutely is. I went to born and raised out here in Southern California. In elementary school, I had started off in the school, John F. Kennedy Elementary School. Mm-hmm. And this is back when they still had the paddle.
Right. Yeah.
So I can say, hey, I'm one of the last of the generation that got the paddle. Now, of course, like we've heard multiple times in our law enforcement careers, I got the paddle for something I didn't do. But I mean, I really didn't do it and took the sacrifice. But here's, what's interesting is if it was the culture of back then, I'd be like, hey, keep it going. But now with this woke ideology and this new form of, people in the education system absolutely don't feel comfortable with that kind of punishment, aside from the fact that most of them don't even believe in like corporal punishment or anything like that. But no, I do love the blue collar background.
You know what, though, Alpha? It wasn't I didn't look at you. You look at it now. It wasn't a form of punishment, right? It was individuals who were concerned about education, who were trying to shape the future of youth. by teaching discipline and trying to keep you out of trouble. At the time, when the paddles, I had a nun too with a paddle and like a metal ruler. So, but now when you look back on it, right, it was just people who committed to education and keeping children, in the right direction to be successful in life. I think that's what's missing now. But like you said, this woke ideology / insanity is taken over, where you have to give 10th place trophies now. Children aren't learning how to deal with failure, right? So when that time comes, instead of like overcoming it, they lash out. And you see a lot of that today. You see a lot of that in the field when it comes to us, when you have interaction with the youth today and law enforcement, you see that too. No one they don't like to be told they're wrong or anything. So I think, where people don't want to hear about what you and I went through, going through the system, it actually, discipline was good.
I agree, 100%. I agree. Back back in those days, you were walking down the block, and if a neighbor caught you doing something wrong, they could deal with you. It was
right.
What's that?
There was nothing wrong with using, like, when the street lights went on, that's when you went home. You actually met someone at a specific location. We knew how to communicate. We played sports. We did all that stuff. We weren't locked in on the phone, playing video games. I haven't checked, but I'm sure Little League participation's down. I'm sure because kids are playing these digital sports now. I mean, obviously, I don't know. I haven't checked it out, but I'm sure I'm right on that.
Oh, I mean, it is a hard thing to navigate because I got adult kids, but also got two very tiny ones, and it's, hey, they're gonna. So you'll probably laugh at this, Mark, or maybe you understand where I'm coming from. I still make my kids watch. I mean, they don't know any different, but I have them watching cartoons we grew up with in the 80s and 90s.
Right. I did the same thing. With my daughter. Yeah, absolutely.
Just so they can get a taste of that culture still, because I think there is something, special about the generations of the, 70s, 80s.
And the comments about, like, the special effects and whatnot, like, oh, you watch this stuff that, when you show the original Star Wars, it's like, wow, because the special effects today, all the technology and everything is like, really? So
and that's one of the reasons I like showing it to the really small ones, because they don't really know any different. Right. So I can get away with it. If I tried with my older kids, they'd be like, you're crazy. Like, that's like us making you go listen to an 8-track, Dad. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Remember, you go out and buy singles. They don't even know what that is.
Oh yeah, holding two boom boxes next to each other so you can record, record the radio.
Putting those big speakers in the trunk.
Yeah, the house speakers. Right? Heck yeah. Good memories right there.
Yeah.
So
I forgot to add to you. I had a nun. I'll never forget this. She used to say, because she hated when someone said the word ain't. She was like, the boy who said ain't fell in a can of paint, and the ruler would come out. But hey, listen, I nothing wrong with it. I had no problem with it.
No, absolutely. So what was the neighborhood did you grow up in? Was it a rough neighborhood? Was it moderate?
It was a mixed neighborhood, blue collar neighborhood, hardworking people. Everybody knew everyone, all the kids played. Like I said earlier, the street lights were our signal to go home. We play manhunt. Those who don't know, we'd be hopping other people's fences and going through yards and everything, trying to play that multiple blocks. I mean, it was fun growing up in this. It was great growing up. I think without technology is great, but when you look back on it, the way the youth today is turning out, we grew up in great times. Where people actually had the ability to communicate one-on-one, as opposed to now where everything's texting and cell phones and whatnot.
We knew who our neighbors were.
Correct.
How big of a deal is that?
I know. When you think about that, it really is. I mean, just people who live in neighborhoods now really don't know their neighbors. It's so true. And the kids right a couple doors down don't know one another.
And one of my favorite generals, General Flynn, one of the things he says, local. And the very foundation of that concept is your immediate circle, which is your neighbors. Yep. And it's real sad. I mean, I don't know if people in the chat would want to add to this, but how many people know the names to, the person across the street, the person behind them, to the left, to the right? Back in the days, like you said, manhunt, jumping fences. And if one of the neighbors caught you, you would hear them say, right. Alpha, I'm going to tell your mom, because they knew that kind of, checks and balances existed. So, and
we all had that grumpy old guy on the street. Keep that ball away from my house. Yeah. I remember the guy's name was Joe. I remember like it was yesterday. Keep that ball away from my house.
Ours was Donnie, and he had a legitimate Sandlot dog, man. So
right. Oh yeah, there was one of them on the street, right?
We couldn't figure out is this? Oh gosh, what was those big reddish hairy dogs? They look like a lion. I can't think of the name, but
big one, right? It wasn't a Saint Bernard, right? Was it Saint Bernard?
No, it wasn't a Saint Bernard. I can't remember the freaking name of it, but it was a big dog. And so we'd send a group of friends to the back side of the fence to start rattling the fence. So he'd run over there, and while he run over there,
right? Somebody has to make the dog up while the other one runs through, right? Exactly.
Yep. Oh, we felt like we were defying death during those times. So let me ask you this then, Mark, you know, is there any story between, before you became a cop where you were doing something different, or did life just kind of push you right into the field of carrying metal on your chest?
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually took the fireman's test first, and the police called me. Like I figured I was going to be a fireman before becoming a cop. And then, the police called me first. I went to the police academy. And then while in the academy, I got tipped off. Hey, Mark, you're probably going to get called. I'm like, I just didn't go through all this for nothing. I'm not starting over again. And I'll be honest with you, people may say I'm crazy, but, being a cop was great. I loved it. I'm glad I chose that profession. You met so many different people. We could, like we said, it was great to, the brotherhood was unbelievable. That's one thing I always tell people, and I'm sure you agree with this. As a family, we may not agreed all the time, but when it came time to do our job, we all band together to get the job done. It doesn't matter. We're all blue, race, all, sex didn't mean anything. If you call for help, we always were there for one another. And that's what I try to, constantly preach now, in the political field. Not to fast forward to what we're going to discuss, but I think there needs to be more law enforcement in politics and as well as military, because, we kind of understand what it means to actually band together to accomplish a specific goal.
No, absolutely. One of the things that I love so much about law enforcement was the definitive difference when you flip the switch. Mm-hmm. We could go from, smoking and joking behind one of the, the favorite restaurants or gas stations we like to hang out. Priority call comes out and it was instant. No one had to say anything. It was instant that it's time to business, different phase, and you went.
That pretty much ended my whole thing of having pasta for dinner. To get that call when you got a job. I said, you know what? I was like, when I was chasing somebody, one of that happened, and I know that pasta's like right there. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this, man. No more pasta dinners. Now more even started, because it never fails. You're sitting there eating, like you said, one of those high priorities come in, shots fired or something, where you have to get up and leave because you got to go back somewhere. So I cut that out. Slice of pizza, maybe a salad, nothing crazy.
And so you were a cop out in New Jersey. So many movies that feature, NYPD and New Jersey and agencies.
I was on cops too in Jersey, in my precinct.
Really?
Yes, I had we had a shooting. I ended up having a foot chase. Caught him, so caught the guy. So I didn't get run on national television. Because you know how cops are. I would have been hazed for life if I would have got smoked on TV.
Oh, it's printouts. What we'd call today screenshots.
My locker would have been destroyed, no doubt.
People buying you running shoes, like we're relentless against.
I guess other. Today the woke folk would call that harassment in the workplace. What we used to do in our locker room. I even kid around about that, right? All the fun we had in our locker room. Could you imagine today? It would be like, oh, it's harassment. It's this. It's that.
If you got an HR person from today. Yep. And plug them in the environment of back then, they would have anxiety. They would lose their mind.
100% would go into a full seizure. I agree. No doubt about it. Yes.
When you were a cop, do you remember the first moment where you were like, man, I did it. I'm here. This is real.
Yes. I think the first time you chase somebody with a gun, you get the gun, like, wow. And my first chase with a gun, I was going over fences. I actually got torn open. Then that's why I started wearing gloves. My friends started calling me gloves because I got ripped open going over a fence. And this is where the truth is about adrenaline. I had no idea how bad I was cut. All I felt was a little burn. Because you know how it is. You chase somebody with a gun. You don't, and it's true. When that adrenaline's flowing, you really don't feel any type of pain. And I didn't realize how bad I was injured until I caught up to him. I had him at gunpoint, and the blood's running out of my hand, which was my gun hand. It's a true story. And like I always tell people today, the whole thing about what you hear, you don't feel pain when you have that adrenaline flow. It's so true. And I lived it. But yeah, that was my first experience, my first, foot chase with a guy with a gun. I got ripped open on a fence. Like I said, I didn't even realize how bad until I had him at gunpoint.
Just to put in perspective for people, and I think I might have shared this story. I don't know. We had a trainee that actually came in from another agency. I want to say it was somewhere out in Louisiana. It wasn't one of the big ones like New Orleans, but it was in that area. And he transferred over here to California, so he had to do like some like intermediate academy just to bring him up to speeds on the laws out here. But we get him out into training, and obviously there was a huge investment, to bring him over that the agency spent. And I mean, it was definitely less than a month, not very long. We get into the same thing: foot pursuit with a suspect with a gun. Guy pitches the gun, all that. Just like you said, apprehended him. Essentially, it's what we would call, arrest without incident. Everything went great. And he quits. He turns in his badge. And, essentially the story was when he realized like this dude was carrying a gun that he could have turned around and killed us with, that was just, like you said, the moment was so real for him that he was like, this isn't what I signed up for. And as we did a lot of shit talking because again, we're cops. But the other thing, when the jokes were over, it was also the amount of respect that we had, that he was able to be honest with himself.
The job isn't for everybody. The job isn't for everybody. I agree with you 100%. I think those who stay on the job, listen, I mean, we had a saying, there's cops and there's police officers. Cops are proactive, police officers are reactive. There's nothing wrong with that. But, it's definitely not for everyone. You have to be, you have to be able to overcome what you see. You can't take it home with you, And I think that's where, it was good to, when you go out after work and with all your friends and everything, talk. But it does, I know, academy instructors hate to hear this word routine, but I think, the routine was to go out after work, where it just, it never bothered me at that point, put it that way. I was able to deal with it and, and enjoy my career. I mean, I think the first time you see somebody, somebody shot dead, I mean, obviously that really hits you. Any type of incident like that, whether it's a fatal motor vehicle accident, and not everybody can deal with that. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's why today, actually it's good that they have so many options for men and women on a job who are, you got PTSD, at least they can go speak to people. I mean, it was kind of taboo back when we were on, only because if you did, right, what's the first thing they did? Take your gun, put you on the desk. It was like they shamed you for seeking help. Where now, that's probably one of the best improvements now, where they encourage you to get help, which is really good.
Yeah, I remember sitting in one of my chief's office because we went through about 4 chiefs, one really good one okay one not so good, and one terrible. I got to experience all of it in my career. But I remember being in the one chief's office. I mean, the honest thing is he was there just because he wanted to retire with stars. That's it. Right.
Of course.
The responsibility and concept of the job, it not even the pay. He needed the stars for the ego to say he did it. And I'm sitting in his office. Now, he wasn't a bad guy. It's just, that was just his mentality, but it was essentially the captains that were running the agency. And I remember sitting him in his office, and this is after, my partner died in a car crash. It was very horrific. And he's getting ready to put me out on leave after this, and it was one of those situations where I ended up getting some anxiety attacks. I never experienced that in my life. And as a matter of fact, the doctors at the ER, because I went 5 times 6 times in 5 weeks, 3 different hospitals, because I thought they were full of shit. I was like, you guys don't know you're saying I'm healthy. No, like my heart's about to stop. I can feel this. Right. And eventually one of them was like, dude, it's PTSD. And up until that moment, I always thought PTSD was BS.
Right.
I was just like, how we roll out with the medics on some of these calls, and people had anxiety or PTSD, and we can see their vitals. And I'm like a little elevated. I'm just like, man, you're fine. Get a hold of yourself. And obviously God had his way of humbling me. But I get to the point where I'm like, I'm lucky these anxiety attacks have happened outside of work. What if they happen inside of work?
Right.
And especially with the stuff, I was very proactive. If that happens, I can get hurt. Someone else can get hurt. So I talked to my best friend. He was also our POA president. He's like, let's just take like 2 weeks off, bro. Just relax. You probably pushed too much. So I'm like, all right, let's go. So we go talk to the sergeant, who's, a good friend of ours. Everybody's on board with it. Well, I go, I'm taking some time off. Chief, I get wind of a rumor that the chief's getting ready to medical me out. Now at this point, it's his 2011, so I'm 7 years in. You know,
Wow.
6 or 7 years in. So I'm still
Early.
very young, very
Yeah.
young. And so I call up the chief secretary and I'm like, hey, like I need to have a meeting with the chief, like ASAP. And so we end up having a meeting and he's like, well, I heard you want to retire. I'm like, heck no, I don't want to retire. I'm young. But he tells me this comment. He goes, well, no one makes it back from this kind of stuff. It goes into the taboo conversation you're talking about. I'm like,
Right.
no, like I'm coming back. I don't want the retirement. Like I'm coming back. And I did ultimately. And the rest is a story of itself. But it goes into what you're saying. It was this taboo concept that if you went to seek help or something, you're gonna be pushed out, ostracized. People were never gonna trust you again. People were gonna judge, can he handle it? Unless you had another significant incident where people could be like, all right, he's back in the game. Up until that moment, everybody was gonna question you. Nobody was gonna want you as a backup. Like that was the mentality.
Well, I think let's face the reality. When you're a proactive, cop, you're going to run into a lot of stuff. It's you can't avoid it. That's why you're out there, right? You're out there. You have your informants. You're being proactive. You're developing information, intelligence. So you're looking for the bad guy. You're looking for take the worst of the worst off the street. That's why you're proactive. So it's unavoidable, and that's what guys like we do. We do when you're proactive, and you have to be able to deal with it.
Absolutely. And I think this will kind of set us up to transition to what you're up to now. How much of what you saw as a cop kind of opened your eyes to the way the real world is as far as the evil that exists? Because me and you have seen it. We fought with it. We've talked to it. We've been, we get as close to it as possible outside of victims. They're about the only other ones that get as close to it that we do. How much did that open your eyes to how dark a part of the world exists that we live in?
Oh, yeah. I think, especially with politics, and I tell this to people all the time, people view this policy where they're, targeting children, this radical sex curriculum, the transgender stuff. But I tell people, look past the politics. When grown men and some women are getting in a room and discussing policies to implement that target children, that's some predatory dark shit. Okay. And I think you agree. I mean, when I went to the academy, what did you hear? Like, people who target children are the lowest form of scum. Your governor, Gavin Newsom, my governor, the New Jersey Democrats, and Phil Murphy's my governor, two scumbags. Let's face it. If you're targeting children, parental rights, we're parents. Children have phases, right? And when you have those individuals who are preying on children when they hit that phase, maybe like Jane wants to play boys sports, and then you have someone who immediately moves in. Well, I think you really want to be James, but we don't have to tell your parents, and vice versa with a boy. That goes beyond politics. And I feel that these Democrats with their radical, soft on crime policies where they protect criminals and want to handcuff guys like us and minimize the victim. You have these individuals now that are coming out of the woodwork. Here in New Jersey, we've had a rash of teachers be arrested for sexual offenses on, students and stuff. And that's no accident. You see it with the teachers union nationwide. So I think, that's very, very eye-opening, disturbing to me. And, we've dealt with all that. You dealt with I have on the job. But to see it in the world of politics, and this is why I tell people how, it's so important to vote. I go, don't view these policies political. There's, for adults to get in a room, right? Say if, you're the governor, you call, hey, Mark, we have to have a staff meeting. I go in that meeting, you say, okay, we're going to implement this policy to encourage, transitioning whatever sex you are on a kid, and we'll keep it secret from the parent. I would say to you, Alpha, you lost your mind? That would be our reaction, right? But you wouldn't do that because you know it. But to have people doing that, it's beyond politics. It's very disturbing that they're taking advantage of their position of authority to do that. And I hope everybody out there realizes what I'm saying. I mean, that's why you can hear me a lot during your show. I'm going to say, you got to get out and vote. how good people push back and be heard is by going and vote, because that's the only way. Because law-abiding American citizens, we don't do all this stupid shit, march through the streets, burning flags, supporting terrorists. We support one flag, the American flag, do what's right, and you send that message by voting. I don't want to get ahead of your show, but no. To explain that to people need to understand that it's not normal behavior for adults to push policies that target children and parents. I'm sorry. It really pisses me off that that's going on. And that's why I keep running for office and I get attacked, but bring it on. I mean, I locked up drive-by shooters for a living like you do. You think some punk politician scares me? I don't want to see him come off like I'm some hard guy, macho, but I'm just speaking realistically, cop speak here.
No, 100%. Yeah, we know what we're capable of.
Yeah.
100. When I think back, well, one, to the kids, and if that should, that's not even political. That's just like humanity. What's right? Like, who cares what letter you got in front of your name? How do you not want to defend and protect kids? Right. And it's crazy that it's become so so and that it has to be a political campaigning point, because that's all crazy. The society's gone and all sideways our culture has gone in this country. But I remember, man, this was probably around 2011, 2012, 2013, like that time frame. And I remember Southern California, we 2 hours from the border, and we get a lot of illegals that come this way, and we're doing our job, taking illegals off the street, helping Border Patrol that's out here. And that's when it was whenever the whole sanctuary city stuff like really started to take off, the original time, not the recent headlines. And I remember when they told us, hey, you can't be calling Border Patrol anymore.
Right.
We're like, wait, what? Why would we not want to do that? Like, these people are committing crimes, and if we arrest them, they're gonna go to the process, and they're gonna get probation on top of probation on top of probation. These people can get them out of the country. Why wouldn't we?
Right.
And now, hindsight's always 20/20. It's just like, damn, I see exactly why the writing was on the wall. This was always the plan to bring us into, changing the face of our nation. So politics is important.
Just think about that, Alpha. They're importing third world criminals as their new constituency, right? And then they want law enforcement not to work with ICE and the Border Patrol. And then they also want you to look the other way when these third world criminals they imported are terrorizing our citizens. Because at the end of the day, right, I had the honor of taking the oath of office of becoming a cop. Also, I'm also a prior elected official, and I'm running again. And during that oath, it never said you get to pick and choose what law you like or dislike and enforce, right? That's the double standard. Us as cops, if we broke any law, what do they always tell us in training? Oh, you're going to lose your job. You're going to get arrested for official misconduct. We have elected officials who are openly committing acts of official misconduct. And that's where the accountability has to be. People need to start getting handcuffed to put an end to this, because that's the only way to stop it. These radical Democrats have gotten so out of control with breaking the law. I mean, here in New Jersey, we had a congresswoman engage in insurrection on an ICE detention facility, assaulted agent. She's indicted now, and now they're targeting Lena Alba for it. That's why they're trying to remove her from office. And she's ranting and raving like, oh, she was doing something good. No, you're not. The word insurrection, which they like to use, right? So on an ICE detention facility where she assaulted an agent. So, but yet she's still in office. And these Democrats who like to selective enforcement when it comes to the law, they're marching this woman around like she's a conquering hero. You assaulted an agent as an elected official. You should be indicted for official misconduct and removed from office.
There's a whole list of J6ers that all their constitutional rights violated for far less than that.
Exactly. You're right.
So let me ask you this.
We could do 2 hours on that alone.
We absolutely could.
Just the COVID, the unconstitutional lockdowns during COVID. But listen, I'm glad you brought the Constitution up, because the Democrats view the Constitution as an obstacle to them gaining full control. I think everyone out there with a functioning brain cell will realize that.
It is. they look at it as like you said, an obstacle and a suggestion. One thing that in law enforcement that we learned, words matter, especially in the application of law. And one of the ones that we all know as cops, two words that have a very distinct difference is should and shall.
Right.
And there's a lot of writing in the Constitution that has the word shall. And these people don't care.
Yeah, because they read the law up until the point that suits them, but they don't read the law in its entirety, which we were trained. You have to read. You can't just stop at the part that you want to apply. You got to follow the law in the entirety, and that's what we're dealing with here.
You have to, and like you said, had we violated that, they would have hit us with not just a crime, but under the color of authority. They would have been enhancement, and it's stuff that these politicians do all the time. So let me ask you this, Mark: what is it that you either saw or witnessed that kind of inspired you? That was like, you know what, I need to go beyond the average, civic duty, and I need to engage. I need to get involved in these politics.
Yeah, I think all the lack of support for law enforcement. Listen. At the end of the day, I bleed blue. I don't forget where I come from. But with that said, I think everybody out there needs to realize the two most important things in the community. The foundation is public safety, and the other is our school system, right? And what are the Democrats doing? They're targeting both, whether it's through radical curriculum, whether it's policies that handcuff cops or protect criminals. So name me a city where there's a lot of crime that's thriving economically. There aren't any. So, having a safe community, that's what maintains your quality tax base. That's what helps you economically thrive. The school district's the same thing. Listen, I ask anyone out there, you don't choose where to live because of the party in control. You choose where to live because it's safe and they have a good school system, or they have some type of private school, whatever someone prefers in that area. So that's that's why I run, and I'm running again, because of those policies here in New Jersey. It just, people say to me, well, you're running for local office. You're not in Trenton, the state out, you're not a legislature. Yeah, but I have a mouth, right? As an elected official, you're just not going to say, I'm going to be heard. My responsibility is to protect children, to speak for the parents. What was our thing? Protect those who can't protect themselves. That's why you run. That's why you become a cop. That's why you become a fireman. That's why you become, your EMS, because, it's not, this isn't for everyone. Unfortunately, you have people in politics right now that have their own agendas. You see it in Congress, right? With all the insider trading, all about the money they're not serving the American people. Like, you're elected to serve an American citizen, but they're more concerned with people outside the country. They want to be a worldwide representative. They want to be activists. We don't elect activists. That's what people need to understand.
And again, it goes back to the concept that I've adopted, and I'll never, change my mind on this. Local is the biggest impact. Right. Of course, the presidency is important. I'm not minimizing that, right. But the reality too is that the decisions that are made in Congress, we don't typically see an immediate effect to that in our everyday lives like we do for local.
Correct.
Local, like that affects your daily lives, whether it's, something as, well, I hate to say simple, because we've all probably experienced this stress where you're driving the kids to school, or maybe you're driving to work and the roads just beat to hell. Right. And then the next, a year and a half later, you're in, your car's in the shop because you got to get your suspension taken care of, because you've been driving a road that's just beat to crap. And then you're thinking, well, where's my tax money going? Why are these roads like this? And it's because you don't have local representation at the city and the county level that represents you, because that's why it's so important.
That's why I always tell people, vote bottom up, because local is important, whether it's your school board, your local council, that's so important. I mean, because, me being on the council, I'm going to make sure our public safety is taken care of, right? What's the chief need? He needs his command staff. You need to be manned properly so you can keep the community safe. You can't have a proactive unit like narco or street crime or robbery if you don't have the manpower, right? And I don't care what party you are. Both parties, they all been engaged in defunding the police at some point. We have to be fair. And when I say that, it doesn't just have to be by marching. It could be by gutting a police contract where people don't want the job in that specific town. So what happens? Their numbers go down by attrition. And then people say, "Oh, where are all the cops at?" Oh, we don't know. Well, you have that elected official who is engaged, with these bad contracts, try to play, stupid. I don't know why no one's here. People just retiring. No one wants to be a cop. That's not true. No one wants to be a cop in your town because of what you did to the contract. I'm living it right now in my town in Old Bridge, New Jersey. The Republican chair here, Anita Greenberg-Bell, she's not supporting me because I supported a different person for governor. So she's against a fair and open process, right? I won my primary. I beat her candidate. She'll support everybody who run the primary. I mean, right now, Republicans need to unite to make sure this radical Democrat that's running for governor doesn't win, who's anti-law enforcement, who supports radical curriculum in our schools, all the sanctuary state. Our school district here has been defunded, okay? The New Jersey Democrats have spent $7.3 billion on the sanctuary state programs. So just think of all the school districts that would be funded if they weren't sending money where it shouldn't be, because that's a misallocation of funds. And there's also federal immigration law on that. I believe it's 1324. And if you look at the elements of the crime, my God, the New Jersey governor, he's committed all of them.
I tell people this all the time. People are like, we need to create a law for this. I'm like, there's already one.
Right.
Do you remember when all the the sexual pornographic material was being in the elementary schools?
Right.
And people were like, we need a law to prevent this. I go, there is one.
Right.
Every state has it. The codes are different, but every state has it. And,
I'm glad you brought that up because we have two parents who exposed that. They're being sued by one of the school librarians. Could you imagine? So if you and I right now, if I held up a photo of one of what the butt plug page in one of those books, I guarantee you would be removed from whether it's from YouTube or something or X. They would take you down for that content. There's no doubt in my mind. That's how graphic it is. As a matter of fact, the parents went and spoke to our state house, and they had huge blowups of the contents of the book. The legislature said, "Oh, you got to take that down. It's too explicit." Then how the hell is it in our schools? It's
insanity.
Ridiculous. You have a legislature in California. He's in that area of San Francisco. I forgot what they call it, the Loins District, whatever. It's like the big, heavy-duty gay district. His first name's Scott. I forgot his last name. But he's another one. He's always legislation with targeting children. I spoke to a mom from Liberties. Her name's Nicole Young, very active in California, protecting children. And when she told me about it, just keep it on both coasts, about what was going on, it's similar to here. But what's interesting is our governor, he said, "I want to turn New Jersey into California, the East Coast." And so that's why it's eerily similar that we have legislatures just like yours. And that's why I brought that individual up. People really need to stop being so party, brainwashed. Vote for common sense. Listen, if you have a party taking money out of your pocket, talking to your children, not concerned with education, rather with ideology, don't vote for that individual. I don't care what party they belong to. I really don't. If you're about what's doing best for community, for children, for the country, right? America first. That's what you have to vote for. Listen, I have no problem working with a Democrat that's about America first, because you have to be there. You can't just say, "Oh, you're a Democrat, go have a nice day." I'm a former Democrat. I didn't walk away. I ran away. That's what I tell everybody now. Don't walk away, run away. It's about common sense. That's how that's what the best advice I can give people out there. Your approach to voting for an individual, apply common sense. If they're not, then don't vote for them.
I'm glad you brought up being a former Democrat, because we do get very tribal,
yeah, absolutely.
Americans, that's the way we are sometimes. But I also try to remind myself and remind my audience is there's a lot of people that are Democrats just because they don't really understand the system, and it's a family thing, and I tell people all the time, I was raised, like I said, we were raised Democrats.
Me too.
That's just the way we are. And especially out in Southern California, a large population of the Catholic Church is Democrat. Now, if you go and you speak to these people one-on-one about their values and the stuff, you're going to be like, well, you're conservative. And if you tell them, they're going to be like, no, I'm a Democrat. And so then if you actually have a like reasonable, honest conversation of, well, here's what Democrats stand for, and here's what Republicans stand for, you create this issue for these people who are like, well, I don't align with this. I align with that. I should be Republican. And the only reason I even know this, Mark, is because when I joined the Marine Corps, a couple days after 9/11, that's when I went to the recruiter's office and ultimately made my way to boot camp. They ask your party affiliation.
Really? They do, huh?
They do.
I actually didn't know that till you just said that. I didn't know that they asked you that.
Oh, they asked. And when I said Democrat, the check-in drill instructors gave me the look like, what'd you say? So,
yeah, you're here volunteering. You're a Democrat.
and that was me getting exposed to that and realizing, okay, I am a conservative. It's just there's a part of the population that's brainwashed because they're just not involved civically the way they should be. And what happened? I carried that home, told my mom about this stuff, and then my mom becomes a Republican. My dad took about 20 years because he's a stubborn old man, you know what I mean? But he voted for Trump this last time. That like we can have this difference, like you said, if we just don't ignore someone because there's a Democrat. Now there's some weirdos, and we write those off. There's some crazy ones, but you just can't blanket that because listen, they are the deep state, which I like to refer to them as, they've mastered propaganda. They control the radio, they control big tech, they control, like you said, the schools. Literally all the source material that were out there, they've had their hands in it one way or another. And so, it's hard for people not to get propaganda. As I always tell people, the people that watch this podcast and people on social media, you're advanced, you're a digger. That's the reason you even found this podcast. Right. But try to think back to when you weren't, and keep yourself, put yourself in those people's shoes because they still exist. A large part, most of the population is not on social media. The voting, let me correct that. Most of the voting age population is not on social media. It's the kids are, but not a lot of us, the older crowd. From you being involved in politics, how hard has it been for you to get your voice heard for the values that you stand for?
Well, I was fortunate. Right before I switched, I went on. I had this, long speech about the sanctuary state, which went viral. So I had, my speech went viral, and then I switched parties. So I had a little advantage with that through social media. But yeah, I mean, I was hit with all this stuff, the usual racist, xenophobe, every phobe on the planet. The Democrats are obsessed with identity politics. That's one thing, right? It's all about fear mongering to divide the community. That's how they, in their minds, they think they maintain control by division. And then guys like you and I are on this podcast right now to let people know how it really is. And you said it too. I grew up Jersey City, Blue Dog Democrats. I got involved with politics, minor stuff, doing signs when I was young. But the one thing I always heard them say, the importance of public safety and stuff like that, they could never be Democrats. And that's what happened to me. I was a Democratic chairman at one point. So the sanctuary state thing, that was the tipping point for me. I mean, I would never go against my brothers and sisters in law enforcement. And I'll send you my speech that went viral. I went ballistic because, we have this jackass senator, Cory Booker. He calls himself Spartacus. And
I don't like that guy.
He's an asshole. So he was actually running for president, and he was bringing illegals across the border like that was getting votes. But he was also bragging that he was tweeting ICE operations. You and I both been on entries. I can't over explain, how dangerous an entry is. What you've been through. You have to do it to really understand the danger. And the fact that these political jackasses are tipping criminals off to this, I just got so pissed off. I just had it. You're putting people in danger. You're not only that, the average person. Because here's what people need to know, and you notice, Alpha. If they're willing to hurt a cop or kill a cop, what do you think they'll do to you out there? Won't even hesitate. Cut your throat, kill you, whatever. Mow you down while trying to escape law enforcement. So that's what people need to understand. This is no joke. You're importing third world criminals where crime is how they earn a living in these countries. That's why these gangs are so big. It's it's an operation. Why aren't the feds hitting them with RICO? They're an organized crime. What is it just, as an Italian American, was it just RICO's just there for Italians? I mean, since they love to do the identity politics. So I'm calling them out now. Let's see some RICO on these gangs. I'm glad to see Trump starting to blow them up, bringing in drugs. I was a narco. You dealt with it. I mean, how dangerous is it? And we didn't even see this. We weren't on a job during fentanyl with all this. Listen, we have people out there that are now using chemical weapons on us. Drugs are chemical weapons. I hate to break the bad news to people because they always think that truth speakers are, right-wing conspiracy theorists, but we're just speaking facts, just from experience, It's just terrible how these Democrats all praise one another when they take this anti-law enforcement stand, and they don't hesitate to get us killed, because that's what they're doing. They're encouraging people to commit acts of violence on law enforcement, and we see it nationwide. I've never seen so many cops get ambushed. It's insane.
I mean, all people have to do is just look at the last 5 years, or 4.5 years. Yeah. Look at what the attack they did on just in the conversation we've had, today. Look at what they've done to the kids. Look what they've done to the border. Look at what's happened. And that's with a law enforcement that exists, that they've been handcuffing these officers from doing their job. Imagine if they remove them, what they would be doing right now. Imagine how bad that would be. I tell people all the time, you don't understand the level of hate these people have for America and Americans.
I'm glad you said that, because people, I retired detective, until you're interrogating one of these people and realize how much zero respect they have for human life. I mean, real gangbangers, you dealt with them. I mean, I had a case one time, I'll never forget, it was involving 3 Colombians. They would, kidnapping's a way of life down there to make money. They would lure people in with a hooker, they'll gun the whole 9 yards. And I tell people that now. I use this story a lot. I'm like, you need to understand they're bringing it. The Democrats have enabled them to bring that level of violence to our streets. We see, right? They go around raping and killing women like it's crazy. I think that, I listened to that Lincoln Riley open 911 tape when you can hear the savage beating her skull in with the rock. I mean, terrible. And the Democrats don't have a problem with that. So how could you vote for these people? It's just the basic principles. Like I'm going to keep saying, common sense, man. You're running for office. Your job is to protect the American citizen first. You're violating your oath of office. And that's why I keep running. Listen, it is what it is. I'm not afraid of these people. I mean, what are you going to hide behind the keyboard and call me names? Who cares? It's all about the heart. Like the badge doesn't make a cop. It's the heart that makes the cop. And the same thing. Heart makes the man.
Absolutely. There's a portion of my audience, and I know this because they email me, that are considering politics. Some, like I said, at the state and national level, and some that are considering, like, the local level. Some that have even reached out to me, they're just considering. Let me correct myself. It's not just, because it's extremely important, but people that are considering the school district, running for those positions. What do you say to the person they've been thinking about it and they're on the fence? What do you have to say to that person that's watching and listening to you right now? Go do it.
If you're watching this show and listening to us right now, go do it, because we need more good people in elected office. I always say, these so-called party bosses, they don't want fighters. They want puppets so they can control. They don't want people like us in office. That's why both sides. That's why the insiders work so hard. Like, look at President Trump, how much he was rejected by the lifelong Republican, right? They didn't want him. The establishment want people like us. But when good people band together, they can overcome that. I just had the establishment come after me in the primary. I overcame it because I talked to people. I did what I was paid to do, right? You're paid to go out there and talk to people as a detective, as a cop, right? So it was really easy for me. But listen, reach out to me, reach out to Alpha. I'll gladly steer you in the right direction. We need good people running. If good people run and we all stick together, it's time to start canceling cancel culture, these woke freaks. Because they're a very small percentage, but good people are allowing them to intimidate them. Because what happens? People who have the most to hide always scream the loudest. And that's what they do. They get on with their name calling. Listen, I'm sure you're the same way. Call me. We work the worst streets. We've been called every name you could possibly call a human being. You're not going to intimidate me by calling me something. I just come even harder.
100%. You know what?
I'm always willing to help anybody. Alpha, man, I encourage everybody to run. If you're watching this show, you're a really good person and you're concerned, because podcasts like this are how people are getting factual information, not from, CNN and all these other clowns, MSNBC, who just basically it's all about party ideology.
I had a particular guest, and actually they're an OG. He's been watching from the very, very beginning, and he's just like, "Hey, man, the county where I work at, they're just hardcore. They're hardcore Democrats." He goes, like, even if I won and got in there, he goes, I wouldn't be able to do anything to change it. And I said, "Hey, listen, I don't have political experience, but I know this: if you did get in, you get to at least slow them down and expose them." Because they're used to operating and saying things, and everybody in there's I. You get to be the nay, the loud nay.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what you do. When you're there by yourself, you speak the loudest because you don't have the votes anyway, so you might as well expose them. And that's what people need to know, the truth, right? When it's one party control, they're able to what? Keep the information from getting out. It's all about controlling the narrative, right? That's why I keep repeating about the fear mongering, dividing communities. This way, that's how you maintain control. True lies is what it is.
Listen, these corrupt politicians, they have no problem, exploiting their constituents.
No.
But when there's a voice to tell everybody that they're exploiting their constituents, people don't like that. People don't like being under the limelight when they know what they're doing is not a good thing. And when you get to come out and be like, hey, this is what we were talking about in that meeting. Like, this is what they're telling you. This is what the papers are telling you. Let me tell you what was said in that meeting. Let me tell you what's really going down. Let me tell you what I tried to present and got shot down. Because then people start to listen and be like, wait, what? What? Hold on. No, that thing I voted for said this. It was for school taxes. What do you mean? It's to make teachers be able to do things and not tell the parents. I didn't understand that, because this is what I tell people all the time. Most people don't have 40, 50, 60 extra hours in the week to go research and dive into these things. So people really do rely, especially people that got two jobs or a single income family, they rely on people to get them that information. And that's why, like you said, the more people we have that are locally involved, the more access to the information that's actually happening we have. And General Flynn says it all the time: information warfare, irregular warfare, cyber warfare, all that stuff, that's playing out right now.
Knowledge is power, man. I agree with General Flynn. I know his son. They're great people. Kyrie's great. We both know mutual friends. So yeah, listen. People have to get involved. That's why podcasts have become so important. That's why I was glad President Trump has podcasters now. Going to the White House and asking questions. It's really important to get facts out there, because there's no more newspapers, right? And most newspapers in New Jersey are non-existent. We don't have fair media here. We have, it's one party tilted. I'm sure you have the same situation in California with most of your media. Yeah, I mean, listen, people need to understand, right? You're going to run for office. I'm not going to lie. You're going to have the other side that's going to come after you. I mean, I don't want to mislead anyone anyway. But if you understand that as you're going in, that if they're attacking you, that means you're in the right direction, right? People won't attack you if they're not concerned about you. And that's what you need to understand.
Like I said, I was Catholic. My mom told me all the time. She goes, if you don't got problems in your life, that's because the devil feels like he already got you.
Yeah. The old Winston Churchill thing, right? If you don't have enemies, that means you didn't stand for anything in life. There you go. That's the way it has to be. It's so
real quick. real quick, Mark, before we get into the rapid fire to close up the show, for people that want to support you, especially people that are out in your area, where can people find you? I've got it scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It's in the description. But people that are listening and not watching, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm OldBridgeRepublicans.com and Old Bridge Republicans on Facebook. You can find me there. Even if you're not in my area, if you're looking to run, you need to speak to someone. Shoot me a message. It's nice to hear from people who want to get out and serve. So that's my thing, man. I mean, you don't have to live in Old Bridge if you live anywhere and you're looking to speak to someone just to get you in the right direction. It doesn't have to be about my campaign or anything. So yeah, it's important for me to get the message out one way or the other, because we got to get common sense back into politics.
Absolutely. Common sense is such something that we definitely miss.
Listen, I just want everybody to know out there, I'm not an institutional political guy. Right now I have the local chairs against me. Just think I'm running against a leftist radical lunatic. And because I didn't back the specific person, the chosen one by the party. So now, she's, behind the scenes trying to tell Republicans not to vote for me. I sent you a picture of my sign, public safety and parental rights, Mark Razzoli for Ward 4 Council. She actually has tried to get one of my signs removed by someone, who owned the prop. It's just insanity. But this is what we have to overcome to get good people in politics. Our message has to get out because it has to be about common sense. And listen, law enforcement out there, military, we need you to start running. I mean, you understand what it's all about. I'm glad to see we have a lot of military now in Congress and, and some in the Senate. It's important.
I've been telling buddies of mine, especially retired ones.
When are you going to run?
Well, listen, it's not off the table. The last 4 years, a lot of people were pushing it on me, but I was like, listen, I got to focus on the fight for my freedom because, FBI January 6th, came after me. I go, so, my funds, everything is devoted here. And if I'm running for office, I can't have, divided attention because it's too important. But we do have a guy out here. And I remember when he came to our Police Officers Association way back in the day to seek our endorsement. He's a Democrat. And we started to look into him. And we found out that he, back in the day, was fighting. He was protesting. He was an activist. Like he said, he was a legitimate activist to try to get 2 people freed that killed cops.
Oh, terrible.
His name's Raul Ruiz. And we were just like, what? So, of course, we didn't endorse him. And that guy is still in office out here. Congressman Ruiz, Southern California, if you guys want to look him up. And so I told myself, when this fight's over, if nobody's going to challenge him, well, then you know what? Stop complaining and do something. And so we'll see. God's hands will direct me. With that, before we get into rapid fire, any potential that maybe we see you later in the future probably run for something that's
I ran for Congress one time, but I live in a gerrymandered district. The Democrats were crying about the Republicans trying to gerrymander. Here in New Jersey, they're the biggest offenders. So, but I ended up with like 55,000 votes. It was the COVID lockdown, so it was when they implemented all the vote by mails. So it was difficult. It was a difficult time to campaign, but you never know in the future.
I truly think as these elections start getting cleaned up, that the face of our government is not only going to shrink, it's going to look so much different.
Well, New Jersey, they have to purge the rolls. That Alina Albert, if you're watching, you're in New Jersey, you have to get these rolls purged because there's a lot of illegal voters on the rolls in New Jersey. There's no doubt in my mind. That was the whole thing about the driver's licenses here, which I think is important. Before we get to the rapid fire, I just want to cover this real quick because it's really important. To people out there, the reason why the Democrats are unhinged about deportations, and just think about this, because all these illegals who they imported got driver's license. What happens? You get a driver's license, you get registered to vote. They don't want their voters being deported, their new constituency. And that's exactly what's going on here in New Jersey, especially. They're unhinged because these voters they imported, these illegal aliens, are going to be going, and they won't be able to vote, and they won't be able to maintain their new constituency. So just keep that in mind.
Let me add one thing just to supplement, because you reminded me of something that's very important. And when I start bringing it up, people are like, it's not a popular position, but I tell people, you got to think outside the box. And I know when people heard, this administration saying we got to go with real IDs, people saw it again as this is the government's overstepping. And look, I think we need to take away laws, not add more laws. I agree with that. But you also got to understand from a tactical mindset, that's how me and Mark see things. Well, what does this look like down the line? Where are we going with this? States like mine and California and others made it very easy for illegals to get driver's licenses. And so if you go to, and it's a state document, it's a legal document. So if you go to vote and it says, hey, you got to, and all of us that are Americans say, oh, see, it's demanding a legal form of ID. So illegals are not going to vote. No, they got to pass in states like California because they do now have a legal government ID. So when
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when you increase the threshold, so it's a real ID. So there's a distinction in these IDs. Yeah, correct. We don't like it, but this also makes it a way to purge out these people that were given something that they shouldn't have and they shouldn't vote.
Well, it's common sense, right? You should want to prevent fraud. When I was on the council, I sponsored a resolution, and I'll email you. I created a mocked up New Jersey driver's license where it's easily to put voter ID on a driver's license. Well, you don't have to commit. You don't have to give a secondary document. You can put it right on a driver's license. I'll send it to you so you can look at it, because you have to maintain election integrity. They're filling these mailboxes now like it's the Publishers Clearinghouse, with vote by mail applications. You don't know who's snatching them up. We need voter ID to maintain it, to maintain election integrity. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, the Democrats always try to use identity politics to scare people. Oh, how is it? So my question, how is an ID racist? That's their number one thing. Oh, voter ID is racist. How is that possible?
You want to buy a car? You need an ID. You want to get a home loan?
Right. You want to buy a gun? You need an ID.
Yeah. Go try it. Go try to adopt a kid without an ID.
Right.
It's not gonna happen. It's
so
I agree with you. So this rapid fire session, Mark, it's fun. Gives us an opportunity to learn a few more things about you. Don't get too hung up on it.
The range thing, man. You got this rapid fire session going on, like bring it back at the range.
Hey, it's a good time, man. I always like to end on a fun note. And if you do get hung up on something, we'll just move to the next one. There's only a few of them. So the first one, coffee or an energy drink?
Coffee times about 4. Triple espressos. I love coffee. Yeah.
All day. I'm there with you. Okay. Yankees or the Mets?
Mets.
You gotta get some people fired up in the chat. All right. Tougher. Criminals on the streets or politicians in City Hall?
Ooh. Equal. Nah, criminals on the streets. But it's close.
I hear you. One song that gets you fired up before a big fight. Wow, before a big fight. I think Thunderstruck. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll roll with you on that one. Favorite cop movie or TV show?
Oh, wow. Cop movie. Doesn't matter what year.
Nah, it doesn't matter.
I think all the Dirty Harrys.
Yeah. Now all the people you pissed off in the chat are back with you. They're happy again.
Oh, because I'm not a Yankee fan. Well, I'm a New York Giants fan. Backstory: my grandfather was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. That's why. So
right on.
That's why.
All right. If you weren't in law enforcement or politics today, what would you be doing?
Oh wow! If I wasn't, probably an attorney. I enjoy it. I have an enjoyment for the law, so probably an attorney.
And then the last one, Mark. Trump pulls you in to the Oval Office today and says, Mark, you name the law, I get it passed right now. What are you telling him?
I would say ban all vote by mails. Right now we have to use them, obviously, because we have an election, but any law where election integrity is increased, that's the law. It has to be changed.
I agree with you 100% on that one. I tell people all the time, all of us, because of our own individual lives and things that we got going on, we all have kind of different priorities. We all fight on different flanks. Someone it's foreign spending, some it's border security. All at the base of everything is our elections. Yeah. If we don't have free, fair elections that are completely transparent, everything else is irrelevant. But we're spinning wheels.
With that said, Alpha, right now here in New Jersey, the vote by mails are going out. So I encourage people, overwhelm the fraud. Independent, Democrat, Republican, you vote Mark Razzoli for common sense. Get your vote by mails back. I mean, right now we have to deal with them. They're not addressed yet, so you have to get them back. I know people don't like them, but if you don't vote, you're only hurting yourself.
I agree. I tell people all the time, if you think that withholding your vote is your protest, you got it wrong, because it just means they're going to protest. They're going to vote for you, and you're just not going to be able to articulate that it happened.
Well, Alpha, that's how you send a message. That's all these elected officials understand is the vote. That's why they say what they say. They want to divide communities, because that's what it's all about.
100%. Mark, it's been awesome. Enjoyed having you as a guest. Look forward to having some conversations again with you in the future. Audience, down below, you can see the handle to follow Mark on X. You see the website, oldbridgerepublicans.com. That's right there, as well as in the description. So if you're driving, don't worry about pulling it over. All the links will be in the description for you to find later. With that, guys, stick around for DPH. That's coming up next. God bless, Semper Fi, and we'll catch you on the other end. As a matter of fact, we'll get in a commercial before we go. With that, you guys, good night, everybody.
Stay safe, brother. Thank you.
Get ready to ignite a revolution with soft disclosure. This isn't just a product drop. It's a full-on movement that's about to shake things up. This is personal care that doesn't mess around, no compromises, just pure, unapologetic quality. First up, the lotion, supercharged with aloe, goat milk, and our exclusive Badlands oil blend. This isn't your average drugstore goop. This is a barrier-restoring powerhouse. Choose unscented when you want clean and simple, or vanilla citrus when you want to smell like you actually give a damn. Then the deodorant, natural, aluminum-free, and straight up badass, built to last 2 months of daily use with scents like crisp mint, the one I love, or bold lemon grapefruit. No gimmicks, just protection that actually delivers. And finally, the tallow bar. And no, it's not deodorant. It's vanilla coffee tallow stick, primal fuel for your skin that's been through hell. Rub it where you need serious moisture, elbows, hands, knees, basically anywhere you're tired of feeling like sandpaper or just want baby soft skin. Every bottle, stick, and bar is handcrafted in Colorado by our Badlanders to live and breathe truth. Partnering with Willow Farm and Badlands Media, we're putting our money where our morals are. Soft disclosure. Make truth your routine. Head to disclosure.com. Use code Badlands for $5 off and join the fight today. Again, remember, soft disclosure. Good night, everybody.